about it, Halloween is a very strange, specific mix of things. Yes, there are the souls of the dead, but there's also pumpkins and a harvest feel and sexy cats and witches. Did you ever wonder how it all came to be the festival we know today? That is the question I'm answering this week. The festival that we know today comes from the ancient Celtic calendar. Now they had two main festivals. They had Beltane, which was the sexy one in the spring where people would lie together and make children to kind of celebrate the spring. But there is absolutely no lying and coupling outside at Samhain, and this is the one in October, which is going to start the whole thing. Now what they would do at Samhain, it's the first day of their calendar, and they would bring the cows and sheep down from the pastures, land tenures would be renewed, and they would believe that the souls of the dead who had recently died would cross to the other world, and souls that had been dead for a while, they might have come back to visit. People would wear masks and they would stay inside, and they would light bonfires to symbolise the fire being lit inside the house. So we have Samhain in ancient Britain, but things are about to change forever, because the ancient Romans are going to invade, and with them they will bring the harvest front and centre to this festival. Now there are two Roman festivals we need to think about. The first is called Feralia. Now this was originally celebrated on the 21st of February, and in this celebration the Romans celebrated their underworldly spirits. They were called the Manes, and actually Roman graves didn't read RIP, Requiescat in Pace, rest in peace. They read Des Manibus, which meant to the otherworldly spirits. Feralia is kind of the last day of a 9-day festival called Parentalia, which was basically celebrating the whole of the passing of the dead and honouring of your ancestors, hence the word parent. Now the other thing that they were celebrating was the goddess Pomona. Now she is the goddess of the harvest. Okay, quick touch on the goddess Pomona. So she was a woodland nymph. She's often represented by an apple or a cornucopia of fruits. She's thought to represent orchards and fruit trees and all of kind of these harvesty things. Now there are some suggestions in secondary sources, so that's not primary sources, guys. I haven't been able to find any primary sources that link Pomona to Samhain, but a lot of secondary sources say that the reason that we might have apple bobbing is because the Romans brought over the festival of Pomona, and these two festivals got kind of brought together. The other Roman festival that we need to think about is called the Lemuria, and that is celebrated on 3 days, May 19th, 11th and 13th. Odd days were thought to be unlucky. Festival for the dead, but honoured the Lemures, or more dangerous spirits of people who died violent or untimely deaths. We're getting real Halloween feels now, right guys? So lemurs were apparently named after them because they were also considered to be scared and unlucky, which is like a cool little fact, if it's true. On midnight of the last day of the Lemuria, the head of the family would put on special clothing, and they had to be barefoot, and they would make a sign, a fist with the thumb between the first and second fingers, I guess like this. Tell me if you think this is right. It's considered to be a sign of fertility. It's meant to represent a phallus. And he would put 9 uncooked black fava beans in his mouth and then spit them out. And as he walked around the house, he would say, with these beans, I redeem me and mine. And the Lemures would then pick them up, since beans are thought to contain the souls of the dead. When all the beans had been spat out, the head of the family would say, "Ghosts of my fathers be gone." So it's a ritual. These are rituals that are established in the Roman Church, but obviously we know that the Roman Empire will fall, and we get the rise of Christianity within the Roman Empire before it does fall. Now, in the year 1609 AD, Pope Boniface IV rededicates the Roman Pantheon, so that's the Temple of Gods, to the Christian martyrs. So Romans are incredibly good at doing this, and the Christian church, obviously, which is founded within the Roman Empire, also become incredibly good at amalgamating people into their traditions. And that's because if you say to a person, you are not celebrating this festival anymore, and you kind of stamp on it, you'll always get underground resistance. But one of the things they were really good at doing was kind of taking a pantheon or a festival and saying, hey, yeah, we celebrate this too, let's put it all together on the same day, we're just doing it together. And then over time, these festivals have been kind of subsumed into the religion. And that's why when you think about Halloween, it's a really cool festival because it feels really ancient, doesn't it? Like, you know, putting out bits of fruit and dressing up as goblins and witches, which are things we don't consider to exist these days. But that is because the Christian church has taken hold of that festival, in this period and made it part of the Christian church. An incredibly successful way of converting people to Christianity. The final day of Lemuria, May 13th, that becomes the feast day of All Martyrs. So basically you're just you're like, hey, we're celebrating. We're all celebrating together. This is now, it's Lemuria's fine. We're calling it All Martyrs Day now. That's great. Yeah, let's party. And that is what they did. And it was so successful. So November the 1st becomes All Saints Day, November the 2nd becomes All Souls Day, and All Hallows Eve, which is obviously Halloween, precedes them. And so they incorporate many of the traditions of Samhain for the reasons we just discussed, because you take the pagans along, you're like, yeah, we're all celebrating, friend, let's get to it. Oh, we're doing a bit of apple bobbing, that's cool, I like that. We're also, here's Jesus, you know. And that's one of the things that's one of the ways that they did that. And it's very clever. But that is why Halloween and these traditions of these ancient people have survived, and you and I are still talking about them today. So apparently, if any Italians are watching, hi, tell me if this is true. So in my research, I found out that we talked about the fava beans and spitting them out. So apparently in Italy today, the practice of purifying the house and souls of the dead continues. In the baking of ossa dei morti, or the bones of the dead, they're alternately called fave dolce, fave dei morte, or dolce dei morte. And these are cookies that are made with almond paste and shaped to look like finger bones or fava beans, and they're served on All Souls Day, and they kind of hark back to that original tradition. And when I found that out, I was like, this is so cool. It's an ancient tradition which the Italians are still using today, and I just think that's so cool. As always, the Reformation changes things, all things religious, so it puts an end to a lot of saints' days, which is a bit of a shame if you're a medieval peasant, because you tend to get those off. They might be the only days you actually do get off. And so Protestantism does not really care for saints' days and martyrs' days and things like that. But Halloween is able to kind of continue and becomes a bit of a secular holiday rather than a religious one. Now, Protestantism really doesn't like it, and early colonists in America, they're not celebrating Halloween. This is not a festival that's being celebrated in the fledgling America. But what does happen is that in 1800, you tend to start getting markets that are incorporating some elements of Halloween, like the harvest, the festival, all of that kind of goodness, that orange goodness that's coming back to America now. And then what happens is that you get a massive wave of Irish immigration, and obviously the Irish have remained a Catholic nation for the most part, apart from the top bit, which is Protestant. But so Halloween remains a big festival. The next phase of Halloween's evolution from early America to modern America is really interesting. Now, in 1820, we have Washington Irving writing Sleepy Hollow, which is one of the first short stories to be centered around Halloween. But things are not still the way we see them today, and Halloween is actually a night of juvenile delinquency in some parts of America. You have children running around letting out livestock, damaging property, and setting fires to things. And there is a suggestion that sweets, candy, things like that might have been given to children as a bribe, as in don't touch my house, in the same way that people in the Celtic world used to once give, put masks to try and scare away spirits. Now, that might be part of the origin of trick or treat, but I also was reading that part of British legend is that we would give out soul cakes, so beggars could go around and knock on doors, and on certain days they would be given a soul cake, which was a bit of food to take them away. Now, harking back to these delinquents who are running around in the 19th century on Halloween, a brilliant example of this is Judy Garland film Meet Me in St. Louis, which is set in 1903 and features one of these sprees. Now, what happens from here is that the adult world, the infrastructure of America, then tries to kind of fight back against this by making Halloween a more commercial and organized space to control these delinquent children effectively. So they start formalizing Halloween festivities in the 1920s and 30s, and around the same time you get books like the Book of Halloween and Denison's Bogey Book for Halloween become popular, and they are offering party suggestions and things like that to try and make Halloween a bit more formal and get those guys out there running around setting fire to stuff, doing some kind of organized fun. Now, from here, studios like Warner Brothers, Disney, they start to create cute cartoon characters, which seems to us very obvious when you think of like cute ghosts and things like that. It's actually quite revolutionary if you think about the history of Halloween to this point. It started off like mega crazy, scary, and then it's still kind of scary because it's dangerous, you've got kids running around setting fire to stuff. So the idea that someone would take a ghost and make it cute is actually quite revolutionary, but that is what starts to happen in the 1950s, getting up to the point where we get to like the 1990s where we have, you know, wonderful Deborah and Tower as Casper. Lots of candy companies are getting involved with merchandise around this period. Candy corn being massively marketed as a Halloween treat, and it's being used for things like pumpkin carving. Now pumpkins, we actually, if we want to find the origin of that, we have to go back to pagan times again. It's probably based on a Celtic tradition and would have been actually a turnip rather than a pumpkin, would have been carved to help scare off frightening spirits. Isn't it crazy how, you know, you get one thing and all, no one who carves a turnip? But obviously for so many years people were carving turnips. The last question we have to ask in this Halloween video is, when did Halloween get kind of sexy? Because all women's even if you're a woman, even if you don't want to wear like a sexy cat costume, if you type in women's Halloween costume, you're going to get like sexy nurse, sexy cat, sexy witch. But where does that come from? Now, I've been researching this and trying to create an answer for you, and I can't find one answer. I think, as we saw with the kind of commercialization cuteness of Halloween figures throughout the 20th century, we had a similar thing happening with the sexualization of Halloween as well as the cutening. So one of the things that I found, firstly, we have to think about the history of dress up anyway. The history of dress up has always been a little bit campy because a costume allows a person to explore a side of themselves, and we've seen this all the way through history with masquerade balls, certainly the balls that they were having in Versailles in France and places like that. One of the other things that I found was that in New York City's annual Halloween parade, which began in 1973, that sits in a period of second wave feminism. You've got the gay liberation movement and the sexual revolution. And one of the sources that I found said that this is the first time that you're seeing more risque costumes coming to the fore. And that might be to do with female liberation and pushing back against male ownership and the male gaze and things like that. So that might be one of the origins. I also found this incredible advert, which is a Coors Light Out advert from 1986, which obviously is a lot later in this parade.
You know, the weirdest things happen to me, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I mean, here I am stocking up for Halloween. I got my steaks, got my ribs. Then when I ask the stock boy where the Coors Light is stacked, he points me to the Coors and Coors Light Halloween display, and I'm on it. Whoa, it's like deja vu. Whoa, it's like deja vu. Look for it where you buy beer. I shop here because it's...
Where you're starting to see the commercialization of a sexy witch, effectively, with Elvira, which is iconic and incredible. So it looks like it is one of those things that's moved throughout the 20th century, along with cuteness and the development and zeitgeist of female liberation and all of those kind of things, push back against, you know, Marilyn Monroe on the cover of Playboy, who knows. So here we are. This has been a deep dive into Halloween and kind of the things that, all of those, like I said at the start of the video, it's like it is a group of very specific things, isn't it? It's definitely pumpkins, it's not turnips, it's orange colours, it's witches, and it's really fun to see the thousands of miles that it has taken to bring all of these things into being the Halloween that, you know, I'm sure you're watching this video around Halloween, the Halloween that you are going to step out into with the lights and the faces and all those motifs that you'll see. And it's so cool. We owe the ancient Celts, we owe the ancient Romans, we owe the early Catholic Church, Pope Boniface, we owe the Irish immigrants to America in the 19th century, and we have a lot to owe to America, who have really created Halloween into what it is today. Yes, it's over commercialized, but it's great fun. It is one of my favorite holidays, and I absolutely love it. I hope the reason that you're watching this video is because you love Halloween too. I can't wait to see you all next week, guys. Thank you so much always for tuning in. This is a really small channel. I only started making these videos in March. I don't know when you're watching this, but that's about, what was it? Right, it wasn't even that actually. I started making these videos I think 4 months ago. So thank you so much always for watching. Please do like, comment and share, because it does help small channels like mine. Can't wait to see you next week, guys.